For folks from the military, how do you think about the transition to tech? What are some of the caveats or nuances with this transition? Hey everyone, I'm super excited to be here today with Adam to talk about transitions from the military to tech. But before we jump in, Adam, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Right now, I'm a technical program manager at Airbnb, a very exciting time for the company where our mission is to help people belong anywhere. Specifically, I'm in the engineering organizations. So I have a couple of cross functional projects that span across the company and help us sort of achieve some of our goals.
Awesome. And so today we'll be talking about something that doesn't get talked about that often, actually, which is for folks from the military, how do you think about the transition to tech? What are some of the caveats or nuances with this transition? And this is part of a larger discussion around tech broadly, and we're going to have Adam here to answer some of our common questions and things like that. And if you have any questions throughout this video, please do comment below. Both Adam and I will be available to offer comments and thoughts. And if you're looking for transitioning into tech, definitely check out tryexponent.com. At Exponent, we help people land their dream tech job with our courses in product management, technical program management, product marketing management, software engineering, and much more. And you can check it out for free online at tryexponent.com. But without further ado, Adam, could you tell us, maybe just start off telling us a little bit more about what you did in the military and a little bit more in-depth detail about your experience there?
Yeah, first I'll just say if there was a resource like Try Exponent when I was coming out of the military, it would have been amazing. I mean, the biggest thing in Gap is trying to find out what is out there and learning about the different interview processes. But yeah, as far as my personal experience in the Air Force, I was what we call a 6.2 E3G. That's an AFSC code that the Air Force uses to code out different job positions. What it really meant was I was a developmental engineer, specifically in procurement of IT systems and communication systems. One of the programs I worked was deployable communications, and we built radios that would deploy overseas and also for use in humanitarian aid. By the time I was wrapping up my assignments with the Air Force, I was working on data center consolidations and consolidating the federal IT systems.
Awesome. Well, that's already a lot, but was there anything else that you did in the military or other pieces or elements to it?
Yeah, I think that's sort of what's unique to the military. I went in as a second lieutenant, and they give you a lot of sort of secondary duties beyond the job, and this is not what I experienced working in tech today. So, other things that I did was I was an IT equipment custodian. I was also a security forces or military police augmentee, and then physical fitness cell augmentee. And then one thing I was very proud of is I was part of the honor guard, performing final military honors at veterans and retirees funerals.
Hmm. I mean, that's a lot of stuff, Adam. I'm curious, like, how did that all help you once you transitioned out of the military?
Yeah, I would say initially, when you're doing all these secondary duties, it seems like an extra burden. You're like, I want to focus on my main job, and how come my calendar keeps getting filled by all these secondary things? But what I've found now, being a technical program manager, is you have to wear a lot of different hats, work with a lot of different teams, and sometimes, you can get involved yourself. So, like IT equipment custodian, day to day, you're just checking in laptops, handing them out, but that really taught me what the value of accountability was, and also meticulously going through these assets and making sure that all my numbers look right. Because at the end of the day, I was responsible. In terms of security forces, I mean, yeah, sometimes you have to roll up your sleeves and get involved. So right there, I would actually suit up in body armor and go out and help the forces folks when they were doing on-base drills. And again, remember, my day-to-day job was I was an engineer, not a soldier or an airman in the field. As far as fitness testing, that is testing has to be done on an annual basis, and some people actually get pretty nervous about doing this. And so, one thing that I really learned there was the importance of effective communication and being very deliberate when you speak. Because if you say something wrong in that situation, you can actually, misguide folks, and it can blow up into something else unintended. With Honor Guard, and again, that was one thing I was very proud of doing. I was actually got to be in charge of a 20-person team doing military funerals. And, on our side, we had done tens or dozens of these. But for the families there, this was their one time, their one chance saying goodbye to a loved one. So I really learned the importance of practicing. We probably practice sequences hundreds of times just for one performance, and that how practice can make really things look perfect on the day of the ceremony.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it sounds like you've done a lot of different things, and that transition of having a lot of different breadth of experience and practice in such a different sector has been really helpful for you. I'm curious though, like before we kind of move on from the military and talk a little bit more about that transition, what are something that you're just really proud of from the military? It sounds like the honor guard was one of them. Is there something else or things that you'd want to talk about your experience there?
Yeah, in terms of my primary job, which again was developmental engineer for communication systems, I got to work on an end-to-end program, which is fairly unique because the government has very long acquisition life cycles and processes. But within about a year and a half span, I moved from prototype to procurement of production systems. So it's an 802.11 Wi-Fi system that is in use today, deploying out to overseas bases and connecting over very great distances communication systems. Yeah, I'm just really proud of that program because I saw it from the very beginning to production, and it's a big example that I talk about today. In the military, I think very early on, we're responsible for very expensive systems or put in charge of people very quickly. There's no way I think if I did a different career path that they would have let me lead a $12 million acquisition within my first 3 years working. So yeah, I would have to say that project I'm most proud of both from the technical standpoint and just what we're able to achieve.
Got it. And so, Adam, you eventually transitioned out of the military into tech. How did you make that decision?
Yeah, I think this comes up quite a bit for folks in the military. We hear about people who left and sort of the different opportunities out there. For me personally, I think that being in the military, again, very happy with everything that I did, and I learned a ton. But I saw that I was on sort of this mapped out path. I knew if you stay in a certain amount of years, you'll make first lieutenant, a couple more years a captain, and major, lieutenant colonel, and sort of was able to write out this whole journey for myself and knew that if I was doing well, I would be able to hit these marks on these dates. Um, to me, though, it felt a little bit rigid in the sense that I didn't really want to know what my destiny was going to be, and that coming out of the military, it's not one path or two paths I could do, but literally an infinite number of things that I could have gotten involved in. So I think really concluded both on that as well as just thinking about this sense of uh, being a patriot and serving my country, and that I could still do that even though I wasn't in the military. And
Totally. Obviously, it's a big transition. Did you take certain steps to make a plan or think about a plan when you were making this transition?
yeah, when I first came out, I didn't really have a plan, but had to quickly as my separation date, we call in the military, was coming up. And so the toughest thing out there was really just learning the different jobs out there. So the framework that I use for folks is step one, you have to figure out what you want to do. Because when you're coming out of the military, again, countless number of things you can do, different paths you can take. But unless you can narrow it down, you really won't know what the next step is. So for me, I had on the table, okay, I can go to grad school. I can go work for with one of the sort of defense contractors, or I can just sort of find a different job and a different path out there. And a big key in order to do this is doing informational interviews. So step one to learn all this is going to all my old college friends, veteran alumni network, all these different networks and talking to folks, just having conversations like this, asking them what they do for day to day, where they could see me being a good fit. And that really helped just narrow down the amount of choices that were out there.
Yeah, and as you made this transition, did you notice similarities to your experience in the military or differences? And what were some of the key highlights there?
Yeah, I would say with the transition and finally starting a role in consulting after I was in the Air Force, the first thing that was very, very difficult for me was figuring out sort of the rank and position of each person when they came into a conference room. So when I was in the military, you literally wear the rank on your shoulder. You can see the colonel walk into the room. Everyone stands at attention. You're like, all right, this is the boss. This is who we need to make the decision. Sometimes in tech, you can walk in and directors or VPs could be even dressed casually. Sometimes they're the first ones in the room sitting there on the laptop. And so it's sort of tough to walk in and gauge, okay, how should I be treating this person? I'd say that was like the number one sort of very visual thing. The second thing I saw was sort of the how we're able to deliver and give opinions. Though yes, in the military, I was able to speak my mind freely, but it was sort of that whenever my manager or my commander at that point made a decision and it was a lawful order, we'd have to follow it. But in consulting, I found that I actually could push back a lot on my senior managers and directors and say, hey, how about we do it this way? What's a different approach that we could do? And the third thing I would say that was difficult is in the military, everyone is unified on a common mission, right? We're very worried about furthering the objectives of the military, but also protecting our soldiers in the field was step one for everyone that we could rally around. You come out and you're working in tech or in industry, and people have different motivations. Some people are looking for that next promotion. Some people are looking purely monetary gain. Other people are just working on work-life balance or focus on their family. There is also company values and missions at certain places I've seen people really do rally around. But you go out to a very different landscape where it's just tough to gauge what people are looking for and what sort of levers and things you can do to help motivate people on a project.
Yeah, it's really interesting hearing this stuff from you, Adam, because, as someone who's been in tech in the beginning of my career, it's something that I've taken for granted, like people dress the way they dress, or you don't understand these things. So it's actually really interesting to hear that perspective. I'm curious also from a job hunting perspective, what were you thinking about in terms of being a veteran and, like the difficulties there or maybe advantages there in that job hunting process?
Yeah, I think when we're in the military, we'd always heard people really valued secret clearances, top secret clearances. But I kind of wanted to break the myth right now, here and now, that when a veteran applies for a job, it's not that an alarm bell goes off and everyone looks and says, oh, Adam Wong, he's a vet. Let's bring him in for interviews. Like that is definitely not the case. You are applying just like every other candidate, but you do have other qualifications, either if it's those clearances, either if it's a leadership experience or whatever you learned from the military. Other things that I saw a lot of but didn't take advantage of myself was that there are military recruiting positions listed right on the website if the company is geared towards that. So I was a company grade officer. I came out as a captain, but we have what they call JMO or junior military officer programs. I saw that a lot in consulting that people could apply for. But my general guiding rule of thumb was, I'm not going to be the perfect fit and match for any role. So if I at least qualify for 60 or 70% of a job description, I'm going to apply for it. I'm going to at least go forward and have that conversation. And we can sort of address what those gaps are as compared to what all the benefits I had coming in as a veteran candidate would be.
Got it. Yeah. I think that makes a lot of sense and that's really helpful. I want to also just, kind of consider the audience here of someone who's maybe in the military now or who is making that transition from the military. Is there something that you would tell them when they think about their job prospects or their transition into technology? Maybe common mistakes or really important tips for people watching?
Yeah, I think the number one thing is that I saw on resumes specifically. So every year in the military, we have sort of I don't even remember what the acronym is now. I think it's called an OPR or Officer Performance Report. So 10 bullet points that are very distinct in how we performed that year. A snippet I'll have of mine is number 1 out of 12 engineers within this division was able to deliver $12 million program. And so in military speak, that actually looks and translates over very well. But if you stick this on a LinkedIn or on a resume, first we'll say 1 out of 12. Who's this guy think he is? Like, what is the story here? And more on that is amount of acronyms or jargon that we use in the military. So downrange, for example, F-22, CONUS, or even CGO. And I'll explain what these are now. So downrange would be if you're deployed overseas, and F-22 is our latest fifth generation fighter jet. CONUS literally means continental United States, or that the person was stateside versus overseas. And CGO or JMO is referring to junior military officers. But for those in the audience now who hear the acronyms, they said, hey, everyone should know what this is, right? Or these are very common, right? But yeah, people outside the military really don't know what these pieces are. And so spend the time to change the resume language and write it out in English so that they can understand, or whatever language that you're applying for. Yeah, as far as other advice there, as far as mistakes, is people not applying for roles because they feel they're either underqualified or that they feel that they're overqualified. And I'll expand there. You never really know how interested you are in a company. Maybe you're overqualified for a role and you're willing to make the investment in there. But you have to go forward through a lot of these different companies and application processes in order to practice and in order to get better at doing interviews. And so you don't want the first interview you do to be at your Google, your dream job, your FAANG job. Apply for a lot of different roles, go through the process, and you'll learn a lot. Yeah, you'll also never really know how interested you are. So as you're continuing through the conversation, it's a two-way interview. They want to know if you're going to be a good fit, but you're also learning a lot more about the company, getting excited about the projects that they're pitching to you as well.
Yeah. Just to comment on the acronym piece, at least, like, it's so funny hearing that because in the military there's a lot of acronyms, but also in tech too. And I think that's just a general good tip, by the way, for anyone's resume. Like, tech, we use these words like LGTM or IARC and all these things, and it doesn't help when you're talking or communicating either in an interview or on your resume. So that's just a general thing that I wanted to say. But keep going, Adam.
Yeah, fully agree with you. And this comes into play a lot when you're changing sectors or you're changing just different industries to just write everything out to translate. Yeah, one thing I just want to talk about, which I see, as you mentioned, for both military and non-military candidates, is salary discussions. Now, I could do a whole another course on salary discussions and my approach there, but if I were to give just upfront advice, what you'd take from this call is don't talk salary with a company too quickly. I've seen very many qualified candidates, talk with the recruiter on the first run about their expectations. And if there's any sort of mismatch, it's much easier for the company to just pass in you as a candidate. So you don't want to come in with this impression of like, I'll work for anything. Like this company is so interesting that, yeah. And the reason why you don't want to sort of lowball yourself is one, you're going to have to sustain on the salary realistically. But two, when they see that, they may take it as a signal that you don't value your own time or your own qualifications as a candidate. So going too low is bad. Going too high is also bad, because if you overshoot for the role and it's not budgeted enough for what you ask for on that first 20-minute call, they may just end the discussion there. So again, my advice is delay the salary conversation as far as you can, but sort of after you do an on-site or a virtual on-site. And the reason why is by the time you do the on-site, the company wants you. And so now you have a little bit more control and more domain or agency to negotiate effectively.
Totally. This is all super great advice, Adam, and I just wanted to say thank you also for taking the time. I think the transition from military to tech is something that's not really talked about that frequently, or people don't really have resources about, or people to go to. And so again, to those watching, if you do have questions, comments, or any other thoughts, definitely let us know in the comments below. I would love to make this open space to have a conversation around some of these tough transitions. Adam, is there anything else that you wanted to wrap or close with before we end the session today?
Just to second that, I mean, in the comments below, happy to engage or connect with any one of you on LinkedIn, talk more about my experience or sort of how we can gear you best to be successful.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Adam. And for those watching, good luck on your upcoming interviews.